We are now on the low rise of ground along which the Union line on September the 20th will be formed. This position as a Union position begins to be conceived by George Thomas on the afternoon of September the 19th. Thomas's men, as you know, many of them had marched all night, the night of the 18th to the early morning hours of the 19th, and arrived in the Kelly field, arrived at what they called the Kelly Crossroads, right down here, on the morning of the 19th, and Baird's division had deployed around the southern end of the Kelly field, and then Brannan's division deployed to the north. Brannan gets sent out and meets Confederate cavalry near Jay's Mill, and what we know of as the fighting of Chickamauga on the 19th begins. Well, during the course of the day, George Thomas had ridden repeatedly out to the east to talk with Brannan and Baird and others about the course of the fighting, and as he grew concerned about the situation of the line out there, he observed this low rise of ground running north and south, parallel largely with the Lafayette Road, several hundred yards to the east of the Lafayette Road, just inside the wood line east of the Kelly field. And by the afternoon of the 19th, George Thomas had begun to conceive this low rise of ground as a position for those troops out to the east to fall back to take up a new position. And he is giving those directives to Baird and Johnson by that afternoon. And in fact, when Cleburne's night attack struck Johnson's division on the evening of the 19th, Johnson's men had already begun the process, particularly in Baldwin's and Villick's brigades, of beginning to pull back to this position. And in fact, if another 15 or 30 minutes had passed before Cleburne launched his attack, Cleburne wouldn't probably have found anything.
We would not be conducting any Winfrey Field night attack tours.
Right. if another 15 or 30 minutes had passed, Baldwin and Villick, and even though Scribner and Starkweather and Dodge seem to have gotten the word a little bit later, but all of those Federals would have been gone. And that's the fact that Baldwin and Villick had already begun some of the movement associated with pulling back here is part of the origin of the confusion in the Federals as a result of the night attack. But they begin to fall back. By that time, Palmer has been able to get most of Cruft and Gross's brigades and Hazen's brigade somewhat gathered in the Kelly field. And as all of a sudden there is the renewed sound of battle out to the east, Palmer orders his troops to fall in, and they march into the woods and onto a road that was there at the time. Today, the remains of that road, when we walk over there, I'll show it to you. It's just down there, but the road came up here and turned up onto the crest of the rise, and then angled off the east side of the rise in that direction. And that column of Palmer's men come into the woods on that road. It's now after dark. They get up onto the rise, and just as they start to turn eastward, the fighting dies down out to the east of them. And in some ways, Cruft's and Hazen's deployment on the crest of the rise is a relic, or is a result of their simply being halted in that move out to the east. And now, since they're on the rise, they're told this is where they are going to fight. And as David related earlier, as these units pull back and deploy, they begin to take up their standard formations. particularly within the brigades, 2 regiments up and 2 regiments back. And this is actually one of the few places along that line where you can see a little bit of that. You actually have 2 lines of monuments here representing that formation. However, that second line should probably be back there a little bit further. So most of the accounts say that the second line was 50, 75, 100 yards back behind.
This, the line that Thomas is going to end up adopting here is much shorter than the dispersed, spread out terrain that he was trying to cover on the 19th. When his troops advanced down the Reach Bridge Road and through the woods here, Palmer's division was coming up from the south. Johnson's division arrives on the battlefield and is fed into the fight on the 19th. Thomas is covering a couple of miles of frontage when you follow the convoluted lines, and so George Thomas is spending a lot of time riding back and forth, trying to coordinate these movements. On the 20th, he's adopted a much more compact defensive line, and this line really starts to take shape. Well, before dawn, but not much before dawn. It's you know, in one sense, the Confederates are absolutely right when Jim reads that account for Polk's brigade. They're talking about, we wanted to attack at dawn before the Federals had time to get their position set, because it's only in the hour or so before dawn and at first light that all of these formations, all of this artillery, all of these troops begin to take up solid defensive positions. And Thomas, in his head, he's noted this line. He notes this ridge, knows it's a worthwhile defensive position, but he hasn't had time to do anything with those troops. I mean, fighting didn't end until after 9 o'clock at night. Most of the troops that stumble back into Kelly Field do so in the dark. They're not going to get a chance to look at sight lines and figure out where to put troops. So this line starts to take shape really in the early morning hours of September 20th. And it's also characteristic, I think, of George Thomas, how compact and solid he builds it. But that means that he's not going to be able to cover his line all the way to the Reach Bridge Road, and we've discussed that in past seminars a little bit. We'll certainly return to that topic here in this walk. But also, as we've discussed, he can't extend farther south because A.P. Stewart's division is going to intrude there. So the compactness of this line means that in certain parts of it, there's going to be great depth. Instead of brigades abreast, we're going to see brigades almost stacked one behind the other.
That's certainly the case in Johnson's division, where they're initially deployed one brigade behind the other, and each brigade in 2 lines.
Right.
6 lines of troops at that time. Anything else you want to add here? So we'll walk out into to Kelly Field now, or do you want to go up the line and then go to Kelly Field?
Go out into Kelly Field.
Okay. All right. And I'll show you the old road